All right, here we go. Let's talk about Israel and Palestine. What is this, day 9, 10? Depends on how you look at it, I guess. Okay, so Biden's mulling a visit to Israel as 30 Americans have been confirmed killed now. This is as of Monday, October 16th. Hezbollah's clashes, Egypt to open the border. I'm not going to read the summary because we'll get to that as it goes through. Well, I might as well. Okay, summary of all of this. An Israeli military spokesman continues to confirm that forces are preparing to implement a wide range of operational offensive plans, which include combined coordinated strikes from the air, sea, and land, while their goal is to completely destroy the governing and military capabilities of Hamas and other terrorist organizations. Now they're just making more stuff up. Furthermore, the spokesman said that the operation will take a long time and that residents of Gaza should leave and not return until told for their own safety, but Hamas has been preventing people from leaving, according to Reuters. Now, that's interesting. So where does Israel expect all of these people to go? You told 1 million people to go. They already are essentially homeless. They live in refugee camps that have been turned into tower blocks. And now where are they supposed to go? There's not a place for 1 million people south in the Gaza Strip. And Egypt has the border blocked off. They say they're going to open it up, but so far that hasn't happened. So I'm not sure where Israel expects these people to go. And they still haven't bombed the hospital yet that they said they were going to bomb. That's good. At least 199 people are being held hostage by Hamas. And is that before the 30 or so that have died in bombings so far? I don't know. According to the Israeli officials who said Monday that they had intelligence about the whereabouts of hostages taken on October 7th, Hamas has said that 22 hostages have died in Israeli retaliatory bombing of Gaza, a claim that could not be verified. Which actually, that's not true. Hamas could just show video. Of course, you can't trust much video these days. Israeli military spokesman said Hezbollah is escalating the situation on the Lebanon border. I don't know about if it's them, because every report I've seen so far says that Israel fired the first shots into Lebanon. So expect Lebanon to retaliate. Israel does. If you fire a shell off into Israel, they retaliate into the other territory. So I don't see why Hezbollah and Lebanon don't have the same rights. Let's see. So to hinder the counteroffensive, and Israel is prepared to fight on two fronts, and even more if required. While an Israeli military spokesman said more than 600,000 Gazans had relocated southwards, and more than 200 Hamas members in the West Bank were detained since October 7th. Israeli PM Netanyahu's national security advisor said Israel is not trying to be drawn into a two-front war. It doesn't seem like it to me. And that Hezbollah's actions are under the escalation threshold so far, while the advisor added that they hope Hezbollah won't de facto bring about the destruction of Lebanon, according to Reuters. In 2006, that didn't work out well for you, so I don't see it getting better. They've had a long time to prepare themselves. Additionally, Iran is becoming even more vocal, as President Raisi said in a phone call with French President Macron that the Zionist regime's actions are a reminder of Nazi actions, while he also stated that Palestinian resistance groups make their own decisions and urged France to prevent oppression and injustice, according to Reuters. U.S. President Biden has said deploying U.S. troops in the Mideast war is not necessary, and Israel has. So that means we're going. That's good. That's awesome. They've switched the advertising, too. I saw white guys being advertised on the military, no more gay or trans. So that means we're going to war. They only do that when it's actually time to fight. Because when it's not time to fight, you can have all of the weak people in there, but you can't have a bunch of gay trans people fighting when you need a real war. If it's a real war, like we need actual soldiers, not people playing cosplay. Let's see. And Israel has one of the finest fighting forces. While he is confident Israel is going to act under the rules of war, and has said it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza. Biden states that he believes Hamas must be eliminated entirely, but said that there must be a path to a Palestinian state. And message to Iran is don't come across the border and don't escalate the war, while it was also reported that President Biden is considering visiting Israel in the coming days. And I'm sure that Iran is real scared of Joe Biden. For real. Nobody takes Joe Biden seriously at all. He's a joke. U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan said the U.S. does not have new intelligence that the threat on the ground is different today and there is a risk of conflict escalation. Sullivan added that they cannot rule out that Iran would choose to go directly engaged in some way, and that the U.S. is concerned about proxy forces, Lebanon's Hezbollah and Iran, according to CBS Review. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken will head back to Israel on Monday for further consultations with Israeli leaders. I want to know why, when he was in Qatar, he didn't mention or talk to the Qatari leadership, hey, Hamas is in there. You guys have our citizens as, holding them hostage. What do we need to do here? Like, etc. He made no attempt to actually do anything. So Blinken is kind of a joke as well. Latest developments. Iran says Hamas is ready to release hostages, but can't do so under Israeli bombing. Why? That makes no sense. They absolutely could. And in perhaps the most positive news of the day, the Wall Street Journal reports that Hamas is ready to release hostages held into Gaza, but isn't able to do so under Israeli bombing. An official from Iran, a major Hamas backer, said Monday. Iranian Foreign Minister spokesman Nassar Kanani said that any move to free civilians would require preparations that are impossible under daily bombardment by the Zionists against various parts of Gaza. I suppose, in some sense, not exactly a promise, but perhaps some diplomatic progress. I mean, I guess in some sense, like, that's not impossible. They are probably stored underground and tunnels and stuff, and so maybe they don't want to risk going outside during the bombing campaign. So I suppose there's some possibility there. But I guess that's something that they'd have to be contacting that and saying to the Israelis, "Hey, we're ready to surrender. We're ready to do this." But I don't think Israel's going to take that at this point. I think their strategy is now, like, they feel like they have a green light to do as much destruction as they can get away with, and I think that's what they're going to do. Hamas officials killed, Israeli military says. Several Hamas officials, including those in the military and financial sectors, have been killed. Israeli Defense Forces spokesman Jonathan Kornrikis said in a session with journalists on the Twitter social media platform. Kornrikis said Hamas is trying to hide behind civilians as Israel hunts its commanders. "We are not trying to kill civilians. We are at war with Hamas," he said. One Israeli civilian was killed by anti-tank missiles fired across the border from Lebanon, he said. And how many Lebanese civilians did you kill? Because you killed reporters. The Iranian threat escalates. Iranian foreign minister said if the Zionist aggression do not stop, the hands of all parties in the region are on the trigger, and warned heavy losses will be inflicted on the U.S. if the scope of the Gaza war widens. Iran's foreign minister also said that Iran will not remain an observer in this situation and informed Israel via its allies that tomorrow will be a day too late if its crimes in Gaza continue. Iran has reportedly made no decision about whether to open a new front against Israel, according to an Iranian source close to the government, but added that a meeting was to be held Sunday night in a Hezbollah command center in Lebanon, the Times reported. Iran's mission to the UN said if Israeli war crimes, genocide is not halted immediately, the situation could ricochet far-reaching consequences. The thing I have about that is, I don't know that Iran is actually serious about this. I mean, look, enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Hamas is the enemy of Israel, which is an enemy to Iran. But Hamas is a Sunni organization. Iran are Shiites. Sunnis consider Shiites to be heretics and actually hate the Shiites. They will kill Shiites. So Iran has got to be looking at this like, yeah, we can help them, but can't help them too terribly much, because if they become too powerful, Hamas will destroy Iran too. Like, they have no love lost for them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that they would do that. Just like Hezbollah is a Shiite militia, so they don't have as much invested in it other than enemy of my enemy. Which, are they going to be willing to? Because Israel will inflict massive harm on Lebanon and Iran or in Syria. They can do some serious damage to Israel. They have a lot of missiles that they can overwhelm the Israeli defenses. But realistically, it doesn't matter how many missiles you find in Israel. Their resolve is only going to get stronger with each one, and they're just going to retaliate even harder. So all that would do is just escalate everything into a regional hot war where even more civilians will die. So I don't know that Israel or that Iran and Lebanon are actually wanting to do that. Although they'll fight, I don't know that they really want to. I think it's just posturing. Everybody wants to seem like they care, but I think in reality, I don't think any of them really want this fight. Because if they did, they'd already be there. I mean, Israel's flattening Gaza right now. I mean, they've done more damage to Gaza in this campaign in just these few days than they did in all of their 2014 war that lasted for 50-some days. They've done way more damage. So if any of these Middle Eastern players wanted to get involved, they already have their excuse, and they still haven't come. I kind of feel like they're not going to do as much as they say. It's just posturing. We'll see. So Biden is considering a visit to Israel. That would be an embarrassment. He's just going to make himself look weak. Like nothing he does here does well. He's kind of sort of at least taken a reasonable line, and so he hasn't inflamed things worse, but him going there is just that's not going to look good on him. He's going to make a mistake. He's going to fumble. He'll slip and fall or trip. Something to embarrass himself. Biden, stay home. Biden is considering a trip to Israel after being invited in a phone call with PM Netanyahu, according to two people familiar with the internal discussions. No decision about whether to travel to Israel has yet been made, the people said. Adrian Watson, a spokesman for the National Security Council, said in a statement to the White House did not have travel to announce. Biden stressed his belief that Israel would act by the rules of war and that innocent civilians would have access to medicine, food, and water. In an interview with CBS of 60 Minutes, he said he didn't believe Israel should control the territory long term. Instead, the territory should be governed by a Palestinian Authority. I think it'd be a big mistake, Biden said. Look what happened in Gaza, in my view, is Hamas, and the extreme elements of Hamas don't represent all the Palestinian people. I would agree with that. As far as Israel following the rules of war, kind of not, sort of. They've already used white phosphorus in civilian areas. They have targeted mosques, schools. They say Hamas is launching rockets from there, but that's actually not really true. They're not launching rockets from the tops of the buildings. They're launching rockets like maybe around the buildings, but you don't have to destroy the buildings to take out the rocket launchers. Hamas has posted videos of their rocket launchers, like they're just little small, MIRV rocket launchers. So like you could totally just take out the rocket launchers without destroying the buildings, but you're destroying the buildings too. And there's numerous videos of Israeli soldiers mistreating that. I mean, it is what it is. Like, war is filthy and dirty and awful, and it's not good when you lie. But it's Biden, so we can't expect anything else. 30 U.S. citizens confirmed dead. The State Department confirmed the deaths of 30 U.S. citizens since the violence started, and another 13 American nationals remain unaccounted for, according to the spokesman. The government is working to determine the whereabouts of the missing Americans and is advising the Israeli government on hostage recovery efforts. Egyptian border tensions grow. Egypt is facing intense pressure to allow refugees in neighboring Gaza to cross the border and escape an expected Israeli ground invasion in the Strip. Central to such a move is Rafah, the only civilian land crossing in Gaza that Israel doesn't control. As the Wall Street Journal reports, Egypt has appeared willing to let foreign citizens through the crossing, but has been reluctant to allow a flood of Palestinian refugees to enter, citing security threats. Yeah, of course. A deal to open the border crossing has been held up, however, by Egyptian concerns that Israel hasn't given assurances it would pause airstrikes, and by Israeli insistence that trucks entering via Egypt be thoroughly searched, the Egyptian official said. Unfortunately, Israel has not yet allowed humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sami Shorki told reporters in Cairo. The Israeli Prime Minister's office declined to comment. We anticipate that the situation in Rafah crossing will remain fluid and unpredictable, and it is unclear whether or for how long travelers will be permitted to transit the crossing, the U.S. Embassy in Egypt said. There may be little notice if the crossing opens and may only be open for a limited period of time. So does that mean the Americans that were detained inside of Gaza and that were trying to exit the Rafah crossing, that that Egypt is refusing to honor their agreement and let them out? I do understand why Egypt does not want to have a bunch of Palestinians flooding into their country. It's because Hamas would certainly be among those lists. Egyptians are not proper Muslims in the eyes of Palestinians, and they are looked down upon. They would happily blow up Egyptian schools, hospitals, churches, whatever, and mosques, because they actually conflict with one another. So that's the reason why Egypt has the border closed. That's why they put a double layer fence in there with concrete and steel. They have walls underneath that they've built to prevent tunnels from going back and forth, because Egypt doesn't want to deal with this. Likewise, this is kind of the big thing. So unfortunately, Israel has not yet allowed humanitarian aid into Gaza. And if we come back up here when we talked about that he would follow, that Biden stressed his belief that Israel would act by the rules of war. You're not allowed to cut off water and electricity to civilian populations, which Israel has done. They are starving them out. There's been no food, no water allowed into there for the last 6 days. People are going to be getting absolutely desperate at this point, and they're not letting humanitarian aid go in. So that's also against the rules of war. So, you have to be on looking at both sides here. And my personal opinion, don't need to stand with either one of them. I can look at it and say, I would just like the fighting to stop now. I mean, as far as Israel's concerned, I get it. You wanted to bloody their eye because they killed a bunch of your civilians. When you stood down and let it happen, because the border crossing between Gaza and Israel is one of the most secure in the world. I don't believe that you were warned. You were warned by Egypt and by U.S. sources. There was a stand down. It's clear you let this happen because you wanted Bibi to be able to get out of trouble. And this looked, it got much worse than you thought it was going to be. You thought it was going to be relatively minor, and then it turned out to be a lot worse. And so now you're overreacting. I don't like the way this is going.